set. Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm Congressman Joe Crowley, the chair of the Democratic Caucus. I'm proud to be joined this morning by the leader of the Democratic Caucus, Nancy Pelosi, and one of the leaders of the DPCC, David Cicilline, from the great state of Rhode Island. I want to take this opportunity to talk about one of the most pressing issues facing Americans today, the staggering cost of their prescription drugs. Last year, 1 out of every $10 spent on health care was spent on prescription drugs. That is simply untenable. Because when families have to choose between child care or medicine, they can't succeed. When seniors have to choose between dinner or prescriptions, we're failing in our responsibilities. And I promise you, these are real choices that Americans are making every single day. Now, Democrats, we do have a solution. We want to use the power of Medicare to drive down the cost of prescription drugs through negotiation, to make it more affordable for Americans to stay healthy and to access those life-saving drugs. But like on so many issues, the Republicans are simply refusing to deal with this. President Trump is refusing to act, and their inaction is hurting working Americans. I'm going to turn the podium now over to the great leader of the Democratic Caucus, who will explain further why the president's policies are setting us backwards. Leader Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crowley, Mr. Chairman of our caucus. Thank you for an informed caucus this morning about issues coming up on the floor and before the public. I am pleased to join you here to talk about, again, a raw deal that the president is giving the American people and the better deal that we are proposing. From day one in his campaign, President Trump boasted about his big pledge to take on Big Pharma, which was getting away with murder. Here's what he said. When it comes time to negotiate the cost of drugs, we're going to negotiate like crazy. Trump told a crowd in Exeter, New Hampshire in February 2016. The drug companies probably have the second or third most powerful lobby in the country. They get the politicians, and every single one of them is getting money from them, the president said. It says they're getting away with murder. After months of kicking the can down the road, the president pulled his punch. He delivered his speech, and guess what? Negotiations were not on the table. Pharma has a lot of lobbies, he said, a lot of lobbyists with a lot of power, and there's very little bidding on drugs. We're the largest buyer of drugs in the world, and we don't bid properly. And I go back to that first sentence in Exeter. When it comes time to negotiate the cost of drugs, we're going to negotiate like crazy. Well, unless like crazy means we're not going to negotiate at all, the president has reneged once again on a promise of financial and health security to America's families. America's families have serious kitchen table concerns about health cost, and the rising cost of health care is largely about the rising cost of prescription drugs. It's really sad. So, again, the president's proposal is a big broken promise to American families, a broken promise to allow Medicare. This is what he promised, that the secretary would be able to negotiate for lower prices for Medicare and save seniors billions. A broken promise to hold Big Pharma accountable for its price hikes and profiteering. A broken promise to fight for the millions of families struggling with high prescription drug costs. That's a raw deal for the American people. President Trump's raw deal for the American people. Democrats have a better deal on prescription drug prices. Our bold, ambitious plan is to lower soaring prescription costs. Our strong, detailed plan calls for real solutions, which Mr. Cicilline will bring to your attention. But it calls for tough new enforcement of price gouging, allowing Medicare Part D to negotiate drug prices, and transparency on excessive drug price increases. The American people deserve a better deal. Democrats have it for them. Now, the president's broken promise on drug prices and not negotiating and that, don't take my word for it. That day, the stock market showed what the analysts said. Pharma has nothing to worry about. Stocks soared because the president pulled his punch. He made a fake promise. I don't know if he ever intended to keep it. But the American people, America's working families, are paying the price. Another broken promise, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that I may want to allude to because it is current, is the issue about China. Some of the things that the president said about China are just remarkable. He said the single biggest weapon used against us and destroy our companies is devaluation of currencies, and the greatest ever in that is China. Very smart. They're like grand chess masters, and we are like checker players, bad ones. Because it's an economic enemy, this is another, on November 2015, because it's an economic enemy, because they have taken advantage of us like nobody in history, this is the sentence that is so stunning that he turned his back on. They have, that is China have, it's the greatest theft in the history of the world. The greatest theft in the history of the world, what they've done to the United States. They've taken our jobs. And now what has he done? What has he done? The Chinese issued a list of concerns that they wanted him to address, and right away he said he was going to relax the sanctions. There's a company called ZTE. Those of us involved in intelligence are very familiar with the cybersecurity threat that they pose to the United States on a bipartisan basis. Our colleagues have spoken up on both sides of the aisle about this over time. But what they did was violate the sanctions they violated the sanctions with North Korea and Iran. The president said we must move in and correct this because too many people in China, too many jobs are being lost in China. Wait a minute. The greatest theft in the history of the world, the Chinese ripping off our jobs. And now it's not just about jobs, it's about national security. And the president is saying now, President Xi of China and I are working together to give massive Chinese phone companies, ZTE, a way to get back into business fast. Too many jobs in China lost. Commerce Department has been instructed to get the job done. Too many jobs in China lost. Our national security threatened. ZTE, a cybersecurity threat to the United States. The president folded in a matter of seconds to the Chinese demand in order to proceed with any talks. So this is, promises made, promises not kept, a raw deal for the American people. The list goes on, but right now we're focusing on fake promise, punch pulled, gift to pharma that the president did on prescription drugs at the same time as we see it as a part of a pattern of saying one thing in the campaign, a central point of his campaign, and reneging on that. With that, I'm pleased to yield and with respect to Congressman Cicilline, one of the co-chairs of our Communications and Policy Committee, for his words about the prescription drug better deal that the Democrats are proposing.
Thank you, Madam Leader. Thank you, Chairman Crowley. It's an honor to be with both of you. When Democrats launched a bold economic agenda, a better deal, that really focuses on raising family incomes, reducing the costs in people's lives, and making sure folks are prepared with the skills necessary to be successful in the 21st century. One of the first planks we released was a better deal on prescription drugs as one of those things that we wanted to reduce the costs on. Because Democrats believe no person in America should have to lay awake at night trying to decide whether they should get medicine to keep them healthy or make their rent payment or their mortgage payment. No senior should spend hours on the telephone shopping around for drugs or struggling to break a pill in half so they can get through the month because they can't afford to refill a prescription. It shouldn't be this difficult for anyone to find affordable prescription medications when they need them. And instead of addressing rising healthcare costs, the Republicans in Congress and President Trump are doing just the opposite. They're handing down a raw deal and doing everything they can to sabotage Americans' healthcare. They voted to weaken protections for folks with pre-existing conditions. They voted to increase out-of-pocket expenses and premiums. They voted to steal from Medicare and Medicaid in order to give a tax break to the biggest companies and wealthiest Americans in this country. And even the GOP tax scam included policies to raise Americans' healthcare costs by handing billions of dollars in tax cuts to huge pharmaceutical companies. And the president announced this so-called plan to reduce prescription drugs, which will do nothing to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. As the leader said, he abandoned his promise to take on big pharmaceutical companies. We all know prescription drugs are rising at an unprecedented and unsustainable rate. Americans pay more than double what people pay in other countries for their prescription drugs, and per capita prescription drug spending in the United States exceeds that of all other countries. And there are really no rules in place to stop drug companies from excessively raising prices on middle-class families. And to address this very real concern that we heard from so many of our constituents, we rolled out a better deal on prescription drugs months ago. Specifically, the plan would allow the government to drive down drug prices by negotiating lower prescription drug prices for Medicare. It would require drug manufacturers to publicly release hard data and information justifying any significant increase, and it would crack down on price gouging in a very significant way. This is a better deal for the American people, a better deal on prescription drugs, and will once and for all rewrite the rules so that the federal government is on the side of consumers and hardworking middle-class American families and not on the side of big pharmaceutical companies. And with that, I'll return it back to our chairman.
Thank you, David. Thanks very much. With that, we'll open it for questions.
I just want to make one more comment. When,
4 questions, 1 more comment.
no, because it's important to note that when the president made this promise about negotiate like crazy, it was music to our ears, because for years, Democrats have been proposing that we must lower prescription drug costs by enabling the secretary to negotiate for lower prices. In fact, in 2006, the year we took back the Congress then, one of the principles that in our 6406 was enabling the secretary to negotiate for lower drug prices. Of the 6406, 5 became law, 1 did not, enabling the secretary to negotiate for lower prices. We couldn't get the 60 votes in the Senate on that. So I know full well the power of the pharma lobby. The president spoke about that and folded to it the other day. But this has been a long-standing, predictable problem since the time they did Medicare Part D. They gave a huge advantage to pharma in that bill. That's why overwhelmingly we voted against it. We thought we could do much better, and we're still paying the price. But not only are we paying the price, more importantly, as a country, because it has an impact on our budget, but America's working families are paying the price. Questions?
Yes.
About the Farm Bill.
Excuse me, just one second. I'll be happy to answer questions on the Farm Bill. Any other questions about pharmaceuticals or China or inconsistency or broken promises of President Trump? Nothing on pharmaceuticals? Do you have it all? You got it? And China. Okay. On the Farm Bill, yes, your question.
Yeah, the GOP press conference right before you, they were saying that Democrats are employing scare tactics, and that they are not cutting off food assistance to people. What's your response to that?
If they think that telling the truth is a scare tactic, then that's their evaluation of it. About what Democrats are doing is telling the truth about what they are doing for childhood nutrition, for nutrition for our veterans, and the rest. And they know it. They're even asking questions about, now, how is this going to impact me in my state, some of the Republicans, because they know that this is a very damaging to our children, to our veterans, to those that we want to have good nutrition programs for, which has always been part of the Farm Bill. It's been a beautiful, historic collaboration between urban and rural. I was in Iowa last week on a farm listening to their other concerns about the Farm Bill, and they said to me, there are many farmers on SNAP on food stamps. So again, this is not just about urban areas benefiting, but it's about a collaboration. So what they're doing is really shameful. That's why almost every religious, faith-based group and the rest are speaking out against it. Any other questions?
Mike?
On DACA, Speaker Ryan and Leader McCarthy went to the White House yesterday, met with Trump, and it sounds like they're looking for some kind of bipartisan deal, something that can pass both chambers and be signed by the president. With that in mind, have you been in any talks recently with the Speaker about what that might look like?
No, all we've said to them is to bring up the bill. Bring up all their bills. Queen of the Hill. If you have a suggestion, bring it up. If you have, and so we, of course, we have a bipartisan bill, and we want the Speaker to bring it to the floor. Short of that, we have a discharge petition. Not we, the Republicans and the Democrats working together in a bipartisan way, not part of the leadership, but part of their own initiative, recognizing that protecting the Dreamers is a value that we all share in our country. And we're just asking the Speaker to bring it up, or if not, to honor, he has to honor the discharge petition. But there's so many signatures on the discharge petition. In the past, when we've had them, whether it was on, way back, I worked with Senator McCain, was my first responsibilities when I became whip, on the McCain-Feingold to reduce the role of money in politics. And when we got close to the number, the Speaker let us bring up the bill. Same thing with XM Bank. When we got close to the number, the Speaker brought up the bill. They're close to the number. The prediction is that they will get the number, but in order to save face for the Speaker, let him have at his discretion to bring it up. It would, what the Queen of the Hill does, have 4 bills. One, the Goodlatte bill, which is an act of cruelty, a legislative act of cruelty, the Dream Act, our Dream Act, any bill the Speaker would like to concoct, and then fourth would be the bipartisan bill that I'm talking about now that has the discharge petition. Under Queen of the Hill, the bill that wins the most votes last prevails, goes to the Senate. We believe that this bipartisan bill that the members have put together who share the value of protecting the Dreamers is the bill that would win. If they would just give us a vote, give us a chance.
Quick follow on that. Are you confident that you get 100% of Democrats? Mr. Vela has said he won't sign the petition because of concerns about wall construction.
So if we had 99 and 44%, you won't know what that means, but that used to be what they said. Ivory soap was 99 and 44, 100% pure. Oh, you remember.
I remember the
In any event, we'll have a strong Democrat. If one person is not on the reservation, we'll see when the time comes. But I respect Mr. Vela's concerns about the border for sure. Yes, ma'am.
On the same topic, the Speaker is actually trying to kill the discharge petition, urging his members not to sign it. But do you guys think that is the only path to getting a vote, or are you open to separately talking about a bill with him and the president? They obviously think the president would veto the Hurd-Aguilar bill, and that's why they don't want that to be the prevailing measure.
They don't know that the president would veto the Hurd-Aguilar bill. I don't know if the president knows that he would veto the Hurd-Aguilar bill. But it answers the concerns that the president has had. So you're asking, are we receptive? We've been receptive for a very long time. We've been very receptive since the president did what I thought was an act of meanness to lift the protections of DACA last September. But at the time he said he wanted to get something done. I don't know who cancels that at the White House, but what he says publicly is encouraging, gives us hope, and then somebody puts the nix on it at the White House. But in any event, we have an answer. There is a path. Let's get it done. And if not, why not? Why don't then say, as they do, oh, we want to protect the Dreamers. No, you don't. You have a path. Let's get it done. The sooner the better. Every day instills more fear into families in our country. That's unnecessary.
I'll just add to that. I think it's the lip service that we've had over the last year or so in terms of the issue of the Dreamers, primarily from the White House, but also from the Republicans in the House and the Senate, and that it's led to this really rank and file movement of a discharge petition and the Queen of the Hill moving towards the legislation that gets the most votes to move forward. As the leader said, the Goodlatte bill, for all of us, for many of us, I shouldn't speak for every member of the Democratic Caucus, but certainly for myself, I'm sure I speak for the leader and for Mr. Cicilline. That's a non-starter for us. But put it out and see how many votes it gets, and certainly put the Hurd-Aguilar bill to the floor and see how many votes that gets as well. And we'll deal with the issue of how many Democrats will vote for it when the bill's on the floor.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing quickly. I think it's important to remember the only place where the DREAM Act is controversial is in the Republican caucus in the House. The rest of the country, overwhelmingly, Republicans, Democrats, and independents understand our responsibility to pass the DREAM Act and take care of these young people. So it's really, to the chairman's point, this is something which there's broad support for. It's just a question of the vehicle to get a vote, to force the speaker to give us an opportunity to actually amplify the voices of the American people on this issue and vote.
Madam Leader, on May 5th, you issued a statement about Congressman Cardenas, when you said that the House Ethics Committee should immediately
Yes.
promptly investigate that matter. I was looking into it a little bit, and my understanding of House rules is that the Ethics Committee does not have the investigative jurisdiction to look into the matter because it proceeds, its jurisdiction would be cut off January 2011, the previous 3 sessions of Congress and this current Congress.
I appreciate your view. I don't necessarily share it, and there is some precedent for going back further.
Well, it says that there needs to be a separate allegation that is directly related to the 2007 allegation. So absent any other new development, that the Ethics Committee here in Congress would not be able to take it up.
Well, the ethics, let's see what the Ethics Committee has to say about it. But I served longer than anybody, on any subject you name. Intelligence, I served longer than anybody. Ethics, I served longer than anybody. 7 years on the Ethics Committee. It's only supposed to be 6, but they asked me to stay longer to rewrite the new, help rewrite the new rules as we reviewed the conduct of behavior in the Congress. I do believe that there is discretion for them to do this. So let them decide, and then we'll go from there. They have that discretion to decide. But let us get back to the better deal, because what we are focusing on with a better deal is not only a better deal, better jobs, better pay, better future. As Mr. Cicilline and the distinguished chairman have said, this is about lowering cost for America's working families, which is an essential part of the better deal, how we reduce their costs. And prescription drugs is a big part of their cost. And as we haven't said, we want to negotiate, we want to stop the price gouging, and we want to have transparency. And transparency is something that is a democratic value. In everything that we do, we want to have as much bipartisanship as possible, as much transparency and openness as possible, and as unifying as possible. I think there's a place to go with this that meets the needs of the American people and is a better deal for them. Again, it's about jobs, it's about lowering costs, it's about a better future. Thank you.
Last question. Is there one last thing on the Farm Bill. Does the Democratic Caucus have any position on sugar subsidies? That seems to be part of the negotiation on the Farm Bill, whether to cut back on sugar subsidies or not.
Well, there are views in our caucus on both sides of many of the issues within the Farm Bill, but we all agree that this bill is not a good path to go down for the American people. Thank you.
Thank you all.